Coming up, London and Essex. From London and Essex in the south to York and Barrow in the north, millions more moved to high COVID alert from Saturday.
ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. London, Essex and communities across the Midlands and Northern England will become the latest areas to move to the high level of COVID restrictions from this weekend. From midnight on Friday, they will be banned from mixing with other households indoors. It means that half the population of England will be living under a local lockdown by Saturday. But there is a continuing stalemate between the government and regional leaders over moving areas such as Greater Manchester to the very high level of restrictions with the closure of pubs and bars. Our political correspondent Carl Dinham reports. To Ben in Manchester. Ben, there seems to be this standoff, doesn't it, between government and local leaders. So what do people there make of it all? The pub and brewery group Marston's has announced plans to cut more than 2,000 jobs. New figures appear to show a concerning rise in the number of people under 65 dying from heart problems. The British Heart Foundation says the increase is down to people not seeking medical help as a consequence of the pandemic. For the charity and the Prime Minister is set to miss his own deadline for a Brexit trade deal, a two-day. As we approach half-term, England and Man United star Marcus Rashford is renewing his fight against child food poverty. Well, joining me now is Anna Taylor from the Food Foundation charity. Heartbreaking to hear a child say, you know, that might be my only hot meal I'm going to get that day. I mean, just good food to sustain them throughout the day, especially when they're at school. Extended free meals over half-term and the Easter holidays for next year. The pressure really is on the... Still to come. But first, today's announcement from the brewer Marston's that it is to cut more than 2,000 jobs is just the latest blow for the hospitality industry. Today, for this week's recession lesson, we are speaking to Kate McCarthy-Booth, who helps secure jobs for the millions of people who work in bars and restaurants. And the Queen has carried out her first public engagement outside a royal residence in 7 months. Since the start of the pandemic, she's only been seen within the grounds of Windsor Castle or virtually carrying out engagements via video link. But today she joined her grandson, the Duke of Cambridge, at the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory near Salisbury, our royal. And finally, a young Liverpool fan managed to calm his anxiety about starting secondary school thanks to the Reds manager Jurgen Klopp. Oh, well, that is it this lunchtime, and you can find out more details of the latest coronavirus lockdown restriction areas on our website, itv.com/news. Mary will be here with the ITV Evening News at 6:30. The news where you all follows the national weather. But from everyone here on the lunchtime team, bye-bye. Hello again. The main stories in London now. The Mayor Sadiq Khan has told London Assembly members the capital's move to a Tier 2 lockdown is necessary to save lives because the virus is spreading in every corner of our city. The borough of Elmbridge will be the only area of Surrey to move into Tier 2 along with London and Essex. For the first time ever, the government has asked the public not to gather at the cenotaph for this year's Remembrance Sunday. 120 people were evacuated from the Shard this morning as a precaution after a smell of burning was reported. More than 100 nightclubs in London have united for the first time to warn the government that more than half of them are at risk of permanent closure within a month if they don't get more help. The weather now, here's Sally. And that is it for now. I'm back at 6 with the latest on those new COVID restrictions. Until then, bye-bye. London and Essex move to high COVID alert from midnight tomorrow. We'll explain exactly what the new measures will mean for you. Tonight, millions face further restrictions as London moves to Tier 2. Good evening. From midnight tomorrow, the capital goes into Tier 2 lockdown. That means millions in this city will be banned from meeting with people from other households within their own homes or at indoor venues, including pubs and restaurants. It was announced this morning in the House of Commons behind me. The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, saying London is on a steep upward curve with cases rising sharply. Tonight, we'll explain what it means for families, friends and businesses. And we'll be in Elmbridge, in Surrey and in Essex, which have also moved to Tier 2. But we start tonight with the latest from our political correspondent Simon Harris on the capital on high COVID alert. Now, most of Essex will also move into Tier 2 or high-level status at midnight tomorrow, but not all. Thurrock and Southend Council will stay in Tier 1. Sangeeta Lal is in grey. Well, let's take a minute now to remind you of what you can and can't do in light of these new restrictions. Martin Stew explains. Well, I hope that's all clear from Martin there. Well, to talk more about this, how we got to this point and what happens now is Dr. Sam Everington. He is chair of the London Clinic. Although venues can still stay open, the restrictions introduced tomorrow do not come with any additional financial support. Nightclubs have never been able to reopen, and today more than 100 clubs have signed a petition calling for more help. They've warned London could lose 80% of its nightclubs without it. Katie Barnfield reports. We'll have more on these stricter restrictions a little later on in the programme, but first on to one of the day's other news stories. And in the trial into the deaths of 39 migrants in Essex, a court has heard a member of the public dialed 999 to report seeing people jumping out of the back of a lorry a fortnight before in an alleged people smuggling drop. Well, Stuart Cox said he was shocked and started to panic when he saw the group running into cars parked nearby. Chloe Keedy was in court. Well, returning to our main headline here in London, from tomorrow night we're moving into Tier 2. Our political correspondent Simon, these restrictions will remain in place.
What's the exit strategy was a question Matt Hank could possibly assume that to go back to Tier 1 is if we drop below 100 cases.
Well, these restrictions are being brought in because cases are rising sharply and the capital doubling every 10 days, which means those working in the NHS are preparing to deal with more coronavirus patients. Earlier, a London photographer who nearly lost his father, an NHS doctor, to the virus, invited 12 other healthcare workers to a day of treats to say thank you for all the work that they've done this year so far and for the work they'll be doing again in the weeks and months ahead. All right, time now for the weather with Sally. And the good news is it's mostly dry for the next few days. Now, before we go, a reminder again of the new COVID restrictions which come into effect from tomorrow at midnight. And with that, it's time to say goodbye from us. We are, of course, back with the very latest after tonight's news at 10. Up next, Mary with the ITV Evening News. But from me and all the London team, goodbye.